I'm Mollie Carpenter, and I was the editor and publisher of the Mountain Democrat newspaper from 1902 to 1922. My mother and father met in a small village just north of here called Georgetown. It was there in 1861 that I was born in a little cottage. I was called Mary. I was named Mary after my mother, but I came to be known as Mollie, my middle name. My father, Gideon Judd Carpenter, came to California in 1850 from Pennsylvania. Now in 1850, of course, a lot of people were arriving for the gold, and father was no different. He relished in telling me stories of my American ancestors that arrived in the Massachusetts Bay Colonies in 1636. Now, interestingly enough, my mother Mary, her ancestors, the Thayers, arrived there 2 years later. So I truly believe that my mother and father were meant to be together, especially both arriving in the Massachusetts Bay Colonies and then meeting in Georgetown. Father continued to mine for gold for about 5 years in the Georgetown area before moving us to Placerville. After our move, he made a name for himself in California. Besides being the editor and publisher of the Mountain Democrat, he rose to the office of Speaker of the California Assembly and Clerk of the Supreme Court. And because of that, we made many trips to San Francisco and to Sacramento. It was one of those trips to San Francisco that I will never forget. It was April of 1906. I was jostled out of my bed with a violent earthquake and sat despairingly on my trunk, wishing I was home and really believing I might die. But my journalistic instincts kicked in, and I decided to stay a couple of extra days and write the stories of the horrors and terrors of the city that lay before me. So I became known for my pioneering journalism. But my true passion was music. At the age of 9, I was singing. At the age of 9, I was playing the organ at the Methodist Episcopal Church on Upper Main. And by the time I was 12, I was singing in public. In fact, I was pulled out of my classroom on several occasions to sing at funerals. So I'm sure I sang for many of these folks here. In my early 20s, I left home for the East Coast, home of my ancestors, to study music. I went to the Wellesley College in Massachusetts and later to the Boston Conservatory of Music. And I guess you could say I could have chosen that as my career, but quite frankly, I missed my family and I missed my friends, and I especially missed my home in the beautiful Sierra foothills. So I returned to Placerville. I began teaching music at the Conklin Academy, which is on what's now known as the Ivy House parking lot. My father, GJ, encouraged and continued to nurture my journalistic interests. After all, he'd been the editor of the newspaper since 1894. A childhood friend of mine, Albina Ingham, was his business manager. She started at a young age as a typesetter. No female ever did anything like that. And 41 years of experience and expertise provide a valuable asset for both father and I. In fact, she was there longer than any other publisher. In 1902, when I took over the Mountain Democrat, she became my partner, and in 1910, we were co-publishers. Now, let me tell you, we were two women that were a force to be reckoned with. Vine and I lived on Bedford Avenue, which afforded us the ability to walk to work. The Mountain Democrat office at that time was located in the Placerville hardware store, and I do believe you can still see my name above the door. The Democrat, or the Mountain Democrat, was published weekly, so the paper was a little different back then. 4 pages of local content and 4 pages of patented insides were sent to us from San Francisco. I called them canned copy. Vine died unexpectedly of a stroke in 1921. She was my lifelong friend and sorely missed. Now, surprisingly, and this surprises many people, but I was quite the social butterfly of El Dorado County. I love to attend a good party. Good afternoon, ladies. especially if that party included wearing a costume. Loved to dress up as a gypsy countess or portray Martha Washington, because the colonial era was one of my favorites. Being the editor and publisher of the newspaper also afforded me many other benefits, including being invited in 1912 to hear William Jennings Bryan speak in San Francisco. Now, if you didn't know, Mr. Bryant went on to claim his fame with his beliefs of teaching evolution in schools. And no one's perfect. My tenure as publisher came to an end in 1922 when I began having serious health issues. And I died in 1923 on one of my trips to Oakland for treatment. It's said that my funeral was one of the largest attended in El Dorado County. My beloved Mountain Democrat wrote a beautiful eulogy, which I tore from the paper, and I'll read for you today. She was blessed with an extraordinary intellect, Mollie Carpenter, and she rests in the hills that have so often echoed with the sound of her voice. The echo of her ideals and her goodness will ring down through the coming years and leave its indelible mark on our political, business, and social life. Again, I'm Mollie Carpenter, and thank you for being with me today.